She's going to die in 30 seconds. For assassins. One target. Isabella Wynn owns $12 billion. But she can't buy herself 30 more seconds of life. The gun is already moving toward her chest. She can't scream. She can't run. She can't even see it coming. But the waiter behind her, he can see everything. He's killed before, 12 times. And he's about to do it again. What happened next changed everything. The person serving your coffee tomorrow might be a former Navy SEAL. The cashier at your grocery store could be a retired CIA operative. And when evil thinks it's about to win, these hidden guardians step out of the shadows and remind us that good still fights back. But before I tell you what happened when a billionaire's world collided with a ghost's past, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from right now? Are you at home? Maybe curled up on your couch with a cup of tea? Are you taking a break from work? Stealing a few minutes for yourself? Maybe you're lying in bed, unable to sleep, looking for a story that will remind you that good still exists in this world? I ask because what I'm about to share isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder that heroes walk among us every single day. And wherever you are right now, whatever brought you to this moment, I want you to know that you've found a place where stories matter. Stories about ordinary people who do extraordinary things when love is on the line. If you believe that the quiet souls around you might be carrying secrets that could change everything, if you've ever wondered what you do when faced with an impossible choice between safety and doing what's right, then you understand why this community exists. We're here because we know that the most incredible stories aren't happening in movies. They're happening right now all around us, hiding behind everyday faces. So get comfortable wherever you are, because what I'm about to share will change how you see every stranger you meet, every person who serves you, every quiet soul who crosses your path. And when you're ready to join thousands of others who believe in the power of hidden courage and impossible love, you'll know exactly what to do. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. Isabella Wynn was cutting into her Chilean sea base when death walked through the restaurant door wearing a $1,000 suit. She didn't know his name was Dmitry Volkov. She didn't know he'd killed 3 world leaders and 12 corporate executives. She didn't know that in her entire 38 years of building a $12 billion empire, she'd never faced anything more dangerous than a hostile takeover. But she was about to learn that money means nothing when someone's been paid $20 million to put a bullet in your brain. Isabella's mind was buried in quarterly projections, completely unaware that her next quarterly report would be written by whoever inherited her company. The irony wasn't lost on her assistant, who'd begged her to take a vacation just that morning. "When's the last time you did something just for fun, Ms. Wynn?" Sarah had asked. Isabella couldn't remember. Fun had been sacrificed on the altar of success so long ago that she'd forgotten what it felt like to laugh without calculating the business advantage. 15 feet away, Evan Brooks was adjusting his bow tie and having what would either be the worst night of his life or his last night alive. Because 3 years ago, Evan Brooks didn't exist. The man carrying dinner plates and refilling water glasses used to be Agent Marcus Sullivan, a federal ghost who'd spent 7 years killing for government paychecks. He'd completed 87 operations without a single failure, until the night everything went wrong in Sarajevo. David Chin, 22 years old, computer science major at UC Berkeley. He'd been walking his dog when Marcus's protection detail failed, and by the time the gunfire stopped, a kid who should have been studying for finals was bleeding out on cobblestone streets while Marcus watched, helpless to save him. That night, Marcus Sullivan officially died. The paperwork was buried deeper than state secrets, and Evan Brooks was born from the ashes of a man who'd failed when it mattered most. But somehow, Dmitry Volkov had dug up that grave. And if Volkov knew who Evan really was, then tonight wasn't just about killing Isabella Wynn. Tonight was about finishing what had started 3 years ago in the blood-soaked streets of a foreign country. Evan watched the 4 killers spread through the Aurelius Sky Lounge like wolves who'd caught the scent of prey. Their movements were choreographed with military precision, each man taking a position that would ensure Isabella had nowhere to run when the killing started. She had maybe 8 minutes to live unless someone intervened. Someone trained to read death approaching in expensive clothing. Someone who'd sworn never to fight again. Someone who had a 7-year-old daughter sleeping 40 minutes away, dreaming about ponies and trusting that Daddy would always come home safe. Sophie. God, Sophie. The reason Marcus Sullivan had stayed dead for 3 years. The reason Evan Brooks existed at all. But watching those men close in on Isabella, something twisted in his chest. The same protective instinct that had driven him through 7 years of federal service. The same fire that had made him one of the best crisis response officers in the division. The same desperate need to stand between evil and innocence that had gotten David Chin killed. The first killer chose a spot at the bar, silver-haired, dead-eyed, ordering whiskey he'd never taste because alcohol meant slow reactions and slow reactions meant mission failure. From that position, he had a perfect sight line to watch Isabella die. The second man positioned himself near the kitchen entrance, effectively cutting off her most obvious escape route. Professional, calculated, deadly. The third took the corner table with his back to the wall, giving him tactical overview of the entire dining room while keeping his gun hand free and ready. But it was the fourth assassin that made Evan's blood turn to ice water. He was already moving, closing the distance to Isabella's table with the patience of a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. Evan had maybe 30 seconds to make an impossible choice. He could stay hidden in plain sight and watch an innocent woman die. He could maintain his cover and go home to Sophie, keeping his promise to always come back safe. Or he could blow 3 years of carefully constructed identity and sign both their death warrants. But there was a third option, the kind only a father would see. He could try to save Isabella smart instead of heroic, calculated instead of emotional, professional instead of suicidal. That's when Isabella Wynn completely shattered his carefully planned world. She looked up from her dinner and smiled at him. Not the polite, dismissive smile that rich people usually gave to service staff. This was real warmth, genuine human recognition, like she actually saw him as someone who mattered. "Evan, isn't it?" she said, and her voice carried a kindness that hit him like a physical force. "You always take such wonderful care of this table. I hope you know how much I appreciate everything you do. In a world where people barely see each other anymore, your attention to detail makes me feel seen." The gratitude in her voice was genuine. She'd been watching him too, noticing his consistency, appreciating his service, treating him like a human being whose efforts mattered, whose presence added something positive to her evening. And in that moment, Evan realized something that sent ice through his veins. In 30 seconds, she'd be dead thinking he was just a waiter who cared about her comfort. She'd never know that someone had recognized her loneliness, had seen past her billions to the woman underneath, had thought she was worth dying for. The fourth assassin reached Isabella's table, his hands sliding inside his jacket toward the weapon that would end her life in 3 heartbeats. Evan moved. To everyone watching, he was just a waiter carrying a tray of water glasses toward the bar, navigating between tables with practiced ease. But every step was calculated warfare, every movement designed to intercept without revealing his true capabilities. When the killer's weapon cleared his jacket, Evan stumbled. It was the most perfectly timed accident in the history of fine dining. A collision that sent crystal glasses exploding through the air like deadly snow, creating chaos that made every head in the restaurant turn toward the commotion. The assassin jerked backward instinctively, his weapon disappearing back into his jacket as dozens of witnesses focused on the dramatic scene unfolding before them. Social camouflage trapped him completely. "Oh my God. I'm so terribly sorry." Evan's voice shook with what sounded like genuine embarrassment as he dropped to his knees, frantically gathering broken glass. "Sir, are you hurt? Did I damage your suit? Please, let me help you." The killer's eyes promised violence, and for just a moment, there was recognition there, professional acknowledging professional. But dozens of phones were already recording, social media posts being uploaded in real time. Exposure meant mission failure, and professionals didn't work when the spotlight was on them. "It's fine," the man growled through gritted teeth. But it wasn't fine, and they both knew it. The other three assassins were already repositioning, subtle hand signals flashing between them as they adapted to the disruption. The operation was being called off for now. As Evan knelt there gathering shards of crystal, he caught the silver-haired killer's expression and felt his heart stop. This wasn't just professional acknowledgement. This was personal recognition, specific knowledge. They knew exactly who Evan Brooks used to be, which meant Marcus Sullivan's carefully buried grave had been robbed, which meant Sophie was already in their crosshairs. Isabella was watching him with genuine concern, her CEO mask slipping to reveal something softer underneath. "You seem more shaken than just embarrassed," she said quietly. "Are you all right?" "I'm sorry, Ms. Wynn. I'm usually much more coordinated than this. Please don't apologize. These things happen, and you're clearly upset about it." Her kindness was automatic, instinctive. "I'm more worried about you than I am about some broken glasses." The grace in her response made his choice to protect her feel less like duty and more like honor. Here was someone who treated service staff like human beings, who showed compassion even when she had every right to be annoyed. "Thank you for being so understanding. You're incredibly gracious." "Isabella," she corrected gently. "After 3 months of watching you work, I think we can certainly use first names, don't you?" 3 months. She'd been tracking his service that long, paying attention to his consistency, seeing him as an individual worthy of recognition rather than just another invisible employee. The rest of Evan's shift passed in a haze of controlled terror. The assassins had vanished from the dining room, but the security monitors told a different story. They were repositioning in the lobby, studying patterns, learning vulnerabilities, building psychological profiles for future operations. Operations that would inevitably involve Sophie. The thought of those men anywhere near his daughter sent a cold fury through him that he hadn't felt since his federal days. Sophie was 7 years old. She still believed her daddy was Superman. Still thought the world was a safe place where good people protected each other and love conquered all the scary things that lived in the dark. If Volkov's team knew about her, that innocence was already dead. When his shift ended at 11:30, Evan took the service elevator down to the employee parking garage. His hands steady but his mind racing through contingency plans. Escape routes, safe houses, extraction protocols. Everything Marcus Sullivan had learned about disappearing completely when staying meant dying. They were waiting by his 10-year-old Honda Civic. 2 of them, Volkov and a younger man who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun. "Agent Sullivan," Volkov said, his Russian accent carrying the weight of old hatred. 3 years is a very long time to stay dead. The use of his real name hit Evan like a bullet to the chest. 3 years of careful identity construction. 3 years of building Evan Brooks from nothing. 3 years of believing Marcus Sullivan was truly buried, all destroyed with 2 words. "I think you have the wrong person," Evan said carefully. "Crisis Response Unit, Federal Protection Division. 7 years of active duty, classified missions in 12 countries. Officially killed in action 3 years ago during the Sarajevo operation when young David Chen's blood painted your hands red. Every detail was correct. Every classified fact that should have been buried deeper than nuclear launch codes, including the one that still woke him up screaming some nights. But we know about your resurrection, don't we?" Volkov continued with the patience of a cat playing with wounded prey. "We know about your new identity, your pathetic attempt at a normal life serving soup and clearing tables. How was this possible? Who had access to nightfall protocols? Who could unbury a federal ghost? Who had the reach to penetrate security systems that officially didn't exist? We also know about the little girl," Volkov said, and Evan felt his world tilt sideways. "Sophie, 7 years old. Attends Lincoln Elementary School. walks to school every morning at exactly 7:45, carrying a backpack covered in unicorn stickers. She believes her daddy is the greatest man in the world. The level of detail was terrifying. Not just surveillance, active targeting. They'd been watching Sophie, learning her routines, mapping every vulnerability in her small, innocent life. She has nothing to do with this, Evan said, his voice carrying a warning that any smart man would heed. She doesn't have to, Volkov replied with a shrug. This is very simple, Marcus. You go back to serving drinks and pretending to be normal. We complete our contract with Ms. Wynn. Everyone goes home to their families intact. And if I refuse? The younger man's jacket fell open slightly, revealing the grip of a suppressed pistol. Professional hardware designed for quiet work. The message was crystal clear. Little girls are so fragile, Volkov said with a smile that never reached his eyes, especially when their fathers make poor decisions about who deserves protection. The threat was specific, credible, and absolutely personal. These weren't men who made empty promises or issued idle warnings. You have 18 hours, Volkov continued, until tomorrow night at 10 p.m. After that, we solve both of our problems permanently. Both problems. Isabella and him. They'd never intended to let either of them live past tomorrow night. The moment the two men melted back into the garage shadows, Evan pulled out a phone he'd hoped never to use again. A secure connection to his buried past. A link to the world that had created and then killed Marcus Sullivan. Federal Protection Division, Night Operations Desk. This is Agent Sullivan. Authorization code Omega Black 77. There was a long pause, followed by the sound of frantic typing as computer systems accessed files that technically didn't exist. Agent Sullivan, our records show you as Kia, Sarajevo operation 3 years ago. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I need Director Martinez immediately. Priority 1 authorization. Sir, it's nearly 1 in the morning. Tell her that Marcus Sullivan is calling from beyond the grave. Tell her that Dmitry Volkov knows about nightfall protocols. Tell her that dead men are walking again, and they're coming for everyone we've ever protected. Those were code words that would wake Carmen Martinez from the deepest sleep and send her heart racing. References to operations that officially never happened, programs that gave burned operatives second lives, security measures that were supposed to be absolutely impenetrable. While he waited, Evan stared up at the 47th floor of the Continental Tower, where Isabella was probably settling into her penthouse apartment, completely unaware that tomorrow night might be her last on Earth. Someone who'd shown kindness to a stranger. Someone who deserved better than dying alone and afraid. Marcus? Jesus Christ. Please tell me you're not calling from a cemetery. Director Carmen Martinez's voice carried exhaustion, shock, and something that might have been relief after 3 years of believing he was dead. Hello, Carmen. Miss me? Where the hell have you been? We had a funeral. I gave a very moving eulogy. Made grown federal agents cry like babies. I heard it was beautiful. Brought tears to my own eyes. This isn't funny, Marcus. Do you have any idea what losing you did to this unit? What it did to me personally? The pain in her voice was real. Carmen had been more than his director. She'd been his mentor, his friend, the closest thing to family he'd had before Sophie came into his life.
I'm sorry, Carmen.
But I had to disappear completely. Because of David Chun. Because I got a 22-year-old kid killed while I was too focused on protecting someone else. That wasn't your fault. The investigation cleared you completely. Friendly fire, unavoidable casualties in a complex operation. You could have come back. A college student died because I failed to account for civilian variables in my protection protocols. You saved a federal judge and prevented an international incident. I failed a kid who was just walking his dog. Marcus. Isabella Wynn, CEO of Wynn Technologies. Professional hit team moving against her tomorrow night, led by Dmitry Volkov. Carmen's sharp intake of breath was audible across the encrypted connection. Volkov? That psychotic bastard is supposed to be dead. We killed him in Prague 2 years ago. Apparently we're both having resurrection problems. They know everything, Carmen. My real identity, current location, daily routines. Including Sophie. The silence that followed stretched like eternity, filled with the weight of impossible implications. That's not possible. Your Nightfall records are buried deeper than nuclear launch codes. Access requires presidential authorization and 3 separate security clearances. Someone with very serious reach wanted me found. Someone who can access files that don't officially exist in any government database. What do you need from me? Support, intelligence, backup before they put my daughter in a body bag to make a point. Marcus, you're a civilian now, officially dead civilian. I can't authorize active federal support for unofficial operations. Then don't authorize it. Just do it anyway. You're asking me to risk my career, my pension, everything I've worked for in 25 years of federal service. I'm asking you to help me save an innocent woman's life and prevent my 7-year-old daughter from becoming an orphan because her father used to kill people for the government. Your daughter? The surprise in Carmen's voice was genuine. She'd known Marcus Sullivan had no family, no personal attachments that could be used as leverage. Sophie, 7 years old. I adopted her after her mother died in a car accident the same night as the Sarajevo operation. She's the reason Marcus Sullivan stayed dead. Understanding clicked into place across the connection. You created Evan Brooks to give her a father. I created Evan Brooks to give her safety and normalcy. But if Volkov knows about her, then nowhere is safe anymore. Carmen was quiet for a long moment, weighing the impossible choice between following regulations and protecting the man who'd been like a son to her. 48 hours. She said finally. Unofficial support, ghost protocols only. If this operation exists at all, it exists in shadows and deniable assets. Understood. And Marcus? Whatever happened to David Chun, whatever guilt you're carrying, you can't save him by saving someone else. I know. Evan lied, because sitting in that parking garage, making plans to risk everything for a woman who didn't even know his real name, part of him believed that redemption might actually be possible. Maybe ghosts could find peace. Maybe fathers could rewrite their failures through future choices. Maybe love could bloom in the spaces between bullets and hope. The next morning, Evan dropped Sophie off at school with a kiss that tasted like goodbye, though he tried desperately to hide that from his daughter. Be absolutely perfect for Mrs. Patterson today, princess. I'm always perfect, Daddy, Sophie replied with a gap-toothed grin that could power half the city. Are you working another late shift tonight? Maybe, sweetheart. But I promise I'll come home. I always come home to you. The promise felt heavier than usual, weighted with the knowledge that some promises are harder to keep when professional killers know where you sleep. Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor and Sophie's sometime babysitter, had agreed to stay overnight if needed. The cover story was a double shift at the restaurant. Another lie wrapped around a larger truth. By noon, Evan was back at the Continental Tower, but not as a waiter this time. He wore a delivery uniform, carried a clipboard full of official-looking paperwork, and moved with the confident stride of someone who had every right to be wherever he was going. Corporate security was designed to keep obvious threats out of the building, not to track the movement of legitimate workers between floors once they were inside. Amazing how invisible you could become when you looked like you belonged. Isabella's office was everything he'd expected from a $12 billion CEO. Corner suite on the 40th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering commanding views of the city, her name etched in elegant steel letters beside the entrance. The kind of office where world-changing decisions were made daily, where power was wielded with surgical precision. It was also the kind of office where billionaires made their final phone calls. Evan positioned himself in a maintenance closet across the hall, giving him perfect sight lines to her office while maintaining multiple escape routes if the situation went bad. Everything Marcus Sullivan had taught him about surveillance and counter-surveillance. Isabella arrived at 2:15 p.m., already deep in animated conversation with a woman in an expensive suit, probably her chief of staff or personal assistant, the kind of gatekeeper who controlled access to one of the most powerful people in America. Even from a distance, Isabella looked exhausted, not just tired from long hours, but soul-weary in the way that comes from carrying enormous responsibility without anyone to share the burden. She moved with practiced efficiency, but there was something lonely about her posture that made Evan's protective instincts stir. At 3:30, the assistant left, and Isabella was alone in her office. Vulnerable, isolated, the perfect target for professionals who specialized in making powerful people disappear without a trace. Time to shatter her carefully constructed world. Evan knocked gently on the doorframe. "Ms. Wynn, I have a special delivery that requires personal signature and explanation." She looked up from her computer screen, and for a moment their eyes met across the distance of her massive office. Recognition flickered first, followed quickly by confusion. "I wasn't expecting any deliveries today. This one's a bit unusual, ma'am." The sender specifically requested personal delivery with immediate explanation of contents. Her expression shifted subtly. In Isabella's world, unusual deliveries usually meant problems. Legal problems, corporate espionage, hostile takeover attempts. Problems that required immediate attention and expensive solutions. "Please, come in." The door closed behind him with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence. "Ms. Wynn, my name is Evan Brooks, and I was your waiter last evening at the Aurelius Sky Lounge." Recognition dawned fully now, but the confusion only deepened. "I remember you quite well. You had that unfortunate accident with the glasses near my table. But I'm afraid I don't understand why you're here in my office. Because those 4 men who were dining in the restaurant last night weren't actually there for the food." Her hand moved instinctively toward her phone, where her assistant was on speed dial and security protocols could be activated with a single button. "I think you should leave immediately. I'm calling security. They were there to kill you." The words hit the air between them like a physical force, causing Isabella's CEO mask to slip for just a moment, revealing the frightened woman underneath. "That's completely impossible. You're clearly disturbed, and I'm calling. 5 years ago, my name wasn't Evan Brooks," he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made her pause. "It was Marcus Sullivan, and I was a federal agent who specialized in keeping people like you alive when people like them wanted you dead." "You're insane." The man who approached your table last night was carrying a Walther P99 in a left shoulder holster. The gentleman at the bar ordered a glass of Macallan 25 that he never touched because alcohol impairs reaction time by an average of 12%. The one positioned near the kitchen entrance was deliberately blocking your most obvious escape route. And the man at the corner table had tactical overview of the entire dining room with his back protected by a load-bearing wall. Isabella's face had gone pale, color draining away like life fleeing a wound. "How could you possibly know those specific details?" "Because reading kill teams and identifying threats was my full-time profession for 7 years before I became a waiter and a father." "Father!" The word came out like a whisper, and there was something in her voice, a raw pain, a longing so deep it was almost physical. "I have a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. She's the reason I left federal service, and she's also the reason I'm here now, risking everything to warn you. I don't understand any of this." Evan moved closer to her desk, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, but also close enough to protect her if Volkov's team decided to accelerate their timeline. 3 years ago, I made a choice during a protection operation that resulted in innocent people being killed. A young man named David Chun, college student, computer science major, just 22 years old. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he died because I failed to protect him properly." Isabella's expression softened slightly as she recognized the weight of guilt he was carrying. "I thought walking away from federal service would prevent future collateral damage. But last night, watching those men position themselves around you like wolves stalking prey, I realized something important." "What?" "Walking away from responsibility doesn't prevent tragedy. It just makes you complicit in whatever happens next." She studied his face with the same intense focus she probably used for quarterly reports and hostile takeover negotiations, the kind of attention to detail that had built a $12 billion empire from nothing. "Assuming for a moment that I believe what you're telling me, which I'm not saying I do, why would anyone want me dead? I run a technology company that develops healthcare software solutions. We're hardly controversial. That's exactly what I was hoping you could help me understand. I've certainly stepped on some toes building this company, made enemies in the process, but murder seems rather extreme for corporate rivalry. Ms. Wynn, whoever hired Dmitry Volkov has serious money and absolutely zero conscience about using violence to achieve their goals. This isn't about corporate competition. This is something much bigger." Evan's phone buzzed with an incoming text message from Carmen. He glanced at the screen. "Intel package delivered to your apartment. Preliminary research suggests Wynn Tech developing military-grade medical AI with battlefield applications. Multiple foreign state actors showing extreme interest. Watch your six." The puzzle pieces were clicking into place with terrifying clarity. "Your company's healthcare software," Evan said slowly. "Can you tell me more specifically what it does?" Isabella's expression shifted to wariness, her business instincts engaging. "Why exactly do you want to know that?" "Because I think someone is willing to start an international incident to get their hands on it. Our primary development focus is diagnostic artificial intelligence for emergency medical situations. The technology can analyze symptoms, medical imaging, and patient data to provide treatment recommendations in real time." "Military applications?" "Potentially, yes. The system could dramatically improve battlefield casualty care, reduce mortality rates in combat zones, or be repurposed and weaponized for biological warfare research." Isabella went very still. "How could you possibly know about that aspect?" "Because federal intelligence just confirmed that multiple foreign governments are showing extreme interest in your technology. And when governments want proprietary technology badly enough, they sometimes choose to eliminate the people who control access to it rather than trying to negotiate." The full scope of the threat was becoming clear. This wasn't just about killing Isabella Wynn. This was about acquiring technology that could revolutionize military medicine or, in the wrong hands, create biological weapons that could shift the balance of power in every conflict on Earth. Technology worth far more than her $12 billion company. Technology worth more than her life. "What exactly do you want me to do?" Isabella asked, and for the first time since he'd entered her office, she sounded more frightened than suspicious. "Come with me right now, before they realize their dinner plan failed and decide to try something more direct. I can't just disappear. I have a company to run, board meetings, responsibilities to shareholders." "You have approximately 18 hours left to live," Evan said bluntly. "Everything else is secondary to staying alive long enough to figure out how to stop them." 4 hours later, Isabella Wynn was sitting in Evan's tiny apartment, drinking coffee from a chipped ceramic mug and watching a 7-year-old girl named Sophie carefully color a picture of a unicorn at a kitchen table that probably cost less than Isabella spent on lunch most days. It was the most genuinely real place she'd been in years. "She's absolutely beautiful," Isabella said softly, watching Sophie select each crayon with the serious concentration that only children brought to important artistic decisions. "She looks exactly like her mother," Evan replied, and there was a gentleness in his voice that hadn't been there during their conversation in the office. Same bright eyes, same stubborn determination, same way of making everything around her feel better just by existing. "Where is her mother now?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Evan answered, old grief flickering across his features like shadows. Car accident 3 years ago. Same night everything fell apart in Sarajevo. Same night Marcus Sullivan officially died and Evan Brooks was born. Isabella felt her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. The night you became a ghost to give her a father. The night I realized that some things matter more than duty, more than mission success, more than personal honor or professional achievement. Like protecting innocence. Like making sure one little girl never has to learn that monsters are real, that people kill each other for money and power, that the world can be cruel and senseless. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Sophie add sparkles to her unicorn's horn with silver crayon. The normalcy of it felt almost surreal against the backdrop of international conspiracies and professional assassins. But now the monsters have found you anyway, Isabella observed quietly. Now I have to decide whether protecting her means running forever or standing and fighting for the kind of world I want her to grow up in. Your military medical AI, Evan continued. It really could save thousands of lives in the right hands, couldn't it? Tens of thousands, potentially. Combat medics could have access to diagnostic capabilities that currently require teams of specialists and millions of dollars of equipment. And in the wrong hands? Isabella's expression darkened. The same algorithms that could identify and treat battlefield injuries could theoretically be reverse-engineered to create more effective biological weapons. Pathogens designed to target specific genetic markers. Delivery systems optimized for maximum casualties. Which means someone thinks your death is worth the risk of exposing themselves internationally. Which suggests they're planning something big enough to justify that level of exposure. Sophie looked up from her coloring book, her face brightening when she saw Isabella watching her. Daddy, is the nice lady going to eat dinner with us? If she'd like to, princess. Sophie addressed Isabella directly with the earnest politeness that only children could manage. Would you like to have dinner with us? We're having spaghetti and meatballs and Daddy makes really good garlic bread. And we have ice cream for dessert if you're not too full. Isabella couldn't remember the last time someone had invited her to dinner without an ulterior motive. Not a business dinner designed to close deals. Not a networking event to build strategic relationships. Not a charity function for tax benefits and public relations. Just human beings sharing a meal and each other's company. I would absolutely love to have dinner with you both, Isabella said, and meant it more than she'd meant anything in years. They gathered around the small kitchen table with its mismatched chairs that had probably come from garage sales and thrift stores. Paper napkins instead of linen, plastic plates instead of china, tap water instead of imported sparkling water. And somehow it felt like the most elegant dining experience of Isabella's entire life. Sophie maintained a steady stream of cheerful chatter about school friends, her favorite teacher, and a book she was reading about magical horses who saved entire kingdoms with the power of friendship. Evan listened to every word with the kind of focused attention that Isabella remembered her own father giving her. Back when she was young enough to believe that parents could fix anything and love was more important than money. Do you have any kids? Sophie asked suddenly, the question innocent and direct in the way that only children could manage. The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but feel the crushing weight of choices she'd made and paths she'd never taken. Sophie, Evan said gently, that's a very personal question. It's all right, Isabella managed, though her voice came out rougher than she'd intended.
No, sweetheart.
I don't have any children. Why not? Sophie asked with genuine curiosity. Kids are literally the best thing in the whole entire world. Out of the mouths of babes. Isabella looked at this 7-year-old with her gap-toothed grin and innocent wisdom, and felt something that had been locked away for years finally crack open in her chest. I was too busy building my company, Isabella said honestly. Making money, acquiring other businesses, trying to be successful. By the time I realized I wanted a family, I thought it was too late to start. It's never too late for anything important, Sophie declared with the absolute certainty that only children possess. My teacher, Miss Rodriguez, got married last year and had a baby, and she's really, really old, like 35 or something. Despite everything, the danger they were in, the fear of what tomorrow might bring, the surreal nature of hiding from international assassins in a single father's modest apartment, Isabella laughed. Deep, genuine laughter that felt like sunlight after years of living in shadows. After dinner, Sophie insisted on giving Isabella the complete tour of her room. It was small but perfectly organized, with a bookshelf full of well-loved paperbacks and library books, a desk covered with art supplies and school projects, and dozens of photographs showing her and Evan at parks, beaches, school events, and ordinary moments that had been transformed into treasured memories. These were the artifacts of a childhood built from love instead of luxury, attention instead of expensive gifts. I want to be an artist when I grow up, Sophie announced with the confidence of someone who had her entire future planned. Or maybe a teacher like Miss Rodriguez. Or possibly a veterinarian so I can help sick animals feel better. Daddy says I can be anything I want if I work hard and always try to help people. Your daddy is absolutely right about that. What did you want to be when you were little? Sophie asked. The question cut deeper than Isabella had expected, taking her back to a time before board meetings and quarterly projections, before corporate warfare and billion-dollar decisions shaped her days. I wanted to be a doctor, Isabella said, surprised by the emotion in her own voice. I thought I could save people and make the world a better, safer place. That's exactly like what Daddy used to do, Sophie exclaimed with delight. He saved people too before he became a waiter. He doesn't like to talk about the sad parts, but he told me that sometimes good people have to do really hard things to protect the people they love. While Sophie got ready for bed, Evan and Isabella sat together on the small living room couch, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of real family life. For the first time in years, Isabella was in an actual home rather than a showplace designed to impress visitors or demonstrate wealth. Thank you, Isabella said quietly. For what? For keeping me safe today. For letting me see this, experience what a real family feels like. For reminding me what actually matters in life instead of what just seems important. Evan was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain and hard-earned wisdom. After Sarajevo, after David Chin died because of my mistakes, I thought I'd lost the right to protect anyone ever again. I thought staying dead was the safer choice for everyone involved, including myself. But you didn't stay dead tonight. No, he said, looking at her directly. Some things are worth coming back to life for. Even though you barely know me? I know enough, Evan replied. I know you thanked me for dropping those glasses when it wasn't your fault and you had no reason to be kind. I know you asked if I was hurt, like my well-being actually mattered to you as a person. I know you're sitting here in my apartment, eating dinner with my daughter, treating her like she's the most fascinating person you've ever met instead of just some kid you have to tolerate. Isabella felt tears pricking the corners of her eyes. She is fascinating. You both are. I'd forgotten that truly important people could exist outside boardrooms and profit margins. You sound surprised by that. I am surprised. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people as individuals and started seeing them as assets, obstacles, or opportunities. Tonight reminded me what I gave up when I made that choice. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to Sophie brush her teeth in the bathroom and hum a song she'd learned in music class. Outside the apartment windows, the city hummed with its usual night sounds, traffic, sirens. The distant rhythm of 8 million lives being lived without any knowledge that international conspiracies were playing out in modest apartments where love was more valuable than money. Evan, Isabella said finally, when this is all over, when we figure out how to stop these people and keep everyone safe, what happens to us? I honestly don't know, he admitted. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. I have, Isabella said, turning to face him completely. I've been thinking about it all evening, sitting here watching you with Sophie, seeing how you live, how you love, how you've built something real and meaningful. What conclusion did you reach? That I don't want to go back to my old life, not completely. I want to remember what this feels like, having dinner with people who genuinely care about each other, listening to a little girl share her dreams about saving the world, feeling like I'm part of something authentic instead of just managing something profitable. Evan's phone buzzed with an incoming message from Carmen. They're moving early. Multiple vehicles converging on your location. You have maybe 8 minutes before they're in position. Ghost protocols are active, backup is en route, but this is going to be very close. The outside world came crashing back into their small sanctuary of warmth and safety. They found us, Evan said, already moving toward Sophie's bedroom. But as he reached for his daughter, Isabella caught his arm. Her eyes intense with emotion she'd kept buried for years. Whatever happens tonight, she said urgently, I need you to know something. Meeting you, being here with Sophie, seeing what real love and protection look like. It's reminded me who I used to be, who I want to be again. And if we don't make it through the next few hours, I needed you to know that today was the most real, most meaningful day I've had in years. Evan looked into her eyes and saw something that surprised him completely. Not fear, though that was certainly present. Not gratitude, though she felt that deeply. He saw the beginning of something that transcended circumstances, a connection that had nothing to do with convenience and everything to do with recognition. Isabella, I know it's impossible, she said quickly. I know we've known each other less than 24 hours. I know this isn't the time or place. But right now, watching you prepare to risk everything to protect your daughter and a stranger, I understand what I've been missing my entire life. What it means to be truly seen, truly protected, truly valued as a person rather than an asset. In the distance, car doors were slamming shut. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the apartment. Professional voices coordinated in languages that meant serious trouble was seconds away. Sometimes love doesn't wait for convenient timing. Sometimes it chooses to announce itself in the most dangerous moments, when honesty becomes more important than safety. Sophie, wake up, princess. Evan called softly but urgently. We need to go on another adventure. Sophie sat up immediately, fully alert despite being pulled from deep sleep. Living with a former federal agent had taught her to trust Daddy's tone completely and respond without questions when that particular voice carried urgency. Are we going somewhere exciting? She asked, already reaching for the clothes Evan handed her. Something like that, sweetheart. Evan's mind raced through tactical options. The apartment building had 2 primary exits, the main entrance, which was almost certainly being watched, and the fire escape, which led to an alley that connected to 3 different streets. Better odds for dispersal and evasion. But first, he needed to assess exactly what they were facing. How many operatives, what level of equipment, whether this was a kill team or a capture team, whether they wanted Isabella alive for interrogation or dead for simplicity. Evan crept to the living room window and carefully peered through the blinds. For black SUVs were positioned strategically around the building, professional positioning that covered all obvious exit points. At least 16 men were visible from his vantage point, probably more in reserve or already inside the building. This wasn't just a hit squad anymore. This was a full military operation. How many? Isabella whispered. Too many for any kind of direct confrontation. So what do? We run, we hide. We stay alive until federal backup can reach us. Evan's phone rang. Volkov's number. Hello again, Marcus. What exactly do you want, Dmitri? The same thing I've always wanted. But you've made this unnecessarily complicated by involving federal resources in what should have been a simple business transaction. You made it complicated when you involved my daughter. Your daughter remains perfectly safe, as long as you make the intelligent choice in the next 3 minutes. Define intelligent choice. Send Ms. Wynn down to the building lobby, alone and unaccompanied. This ends cleanly and quietly. No collateral damage, no complications. Evan looked at Isabella, who was already shaking her head with absolute determination. That's not happening. Then we come upstairs to collect her personally. And when we do, there are no guarantees about anyone's safety, including little girls who should be sleeping peacefully instead of running for their lives because their father couldn't leave well enough alone. The threat against Sophie sent rage flowing through Evan's system like molten steel. These men had crossed every possible line. You have exactly 2 minutes to reconsider your position, Volkov said with the patience of someone who held all the advantages. After that, we solve this problem permanently, and your daughter learns what happens to children whose fathers make enemies of the wrong people. The line went dead. How long do we have? Isabella asked. 2 minutes, maybe less. Sophie appeared in the doorway, fully dressed and carrying her favorite stuffed elephant, ready for whatever adventure Daddy had planned. Are the bad men here? She asked with the matter-of-fact acceptance that broke Isabella's heart completely. No 7-year-old should have to ask that question. No child should live with the understanding that bad men sometimes came in the night and that adventures sometimes meant running from people who wanted to hurt the ones you loved. Yes, princess, but we're going to keep each other safe. All 3 of us? All 3 of us. Evan promised, and Isabella felt something shift inside her chest at being included in that circle of protection. They reached the fire escape just as elevator bells chimed on Evan's floor. The metal stairs were slick with evening moisture, but they moved quickly and quietly downward, Isabella managing the descent in business heels with surprising grace and Sophie treating the entire experience like the grand adventure Evan had promised. From the alley behind the building, Evan could see the perimeter that Volkov's team had established. They'd covered the main entrances and parking areas with professional thoroughness, but they'd left the alley approach more lightly guarded than the others. It was either an oversight born of overconfidence or a deliberate funnel designed to channel their escape in a predetermined direction. Either way, it was their best chance. There, Evan pointed to a gap between buildings 2 blocks away. If we can reach that intersection, federal backup should be able to reach us. They moved through the shadows like ghosts, using doorways and dumpsters for concealment, avoiding streetlights and security cameras, staying low and quiet. Sophie never complained about the pace or the fear, never asked why they were playing hide-and-seek with dangerous men. She simply held Isabella's hand tightly and trusted that the adults would handle everything. But as they reached the mouth of the alley, searchlights blazed to life around them. They'd been spotted. Thermal imaging equipment, motion detection sensors, professional surveillance technology that had been tracking their movement from the moment they'd left the building. Run, Evan said. What happened next defied every law of probability and common sense that Isabella had ever understood about the world. Isabella, who hadn't run anywhere in heels since college, somehow managed to keep pace with a trained federal agent while never letting go of a 7-year-old girl's hand. Sophie, who should have been terrified by men with guns shouting orders behind them, instead began narrating their escape like it was the greatest adventure story ever told. And then the brave princess and the handsome prince and the nice lady ran through the magic forest to escape the dragons who wanted to steal the kingdom's most precious treasure. Evan, who'd spent 3 years convinced he'd lost his edge and his instincts, found himself moving with the fluid precision of his Marcus Sullivan days. Every decision was perfect, every turn was calculated, every step was taking them closer to safety and farther from the men who wanted them dead. Behind them, voices shouted orders in multiple languages as car engines roared to life and radio chatter coordinated pursuit patterns across the city grid. Ahead of them, sirens began to wail like cavalry arriving in an old Western movie, the sound of federal backup racing to reach them before Volkov's team could complete their mission. Carmen had kept her word. Help was coming, but it was going to be close. Closer than anything had a right to be when the lives of innocent people hung in the balance. They reached the intersection just as the first federal tactical vehicles rounded the corner, emergency lights painting the street in alternating red and blue as tactical officers poured out to take positions behind armored cars and concrete barriers. "Federal agents," someone shouted through a megaphone. "Drop your weapons immediately and surrender." Volkov's assault team, caught between their fleeing targets and an arriving federal response force, made the only choice that professional operatives could make when faced with capture or mission failure. They melted into the night like shadows, abandoning the operation rather than risk exposure and arrest. In the sudden silence that followed, Isabella realized she was crying. Not from fear, though that had certainly been present throughout their escape. Not from relief, though she felt that in overwhelming waves. She was crying because she'd never felt so completely, vibrantly alive in her entire life. Never felt so connected to other human beings. Never understood what it truly meant to be part of something bigger and more important than herself. "It's over," Evan said, pulling both Isabella and Sophie into a protective embrace that felt like coming home after years of wandering lost. "It's really over." But as Isabella stood there in the circle of Evan's arms, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a federal crime scene, she realized something profound and life-changing. It wasn't over at all. It was just beginning. 6 months later, the wedding was small and perfect. Just immediate family, a handful of close friends, and Sophie serving as the flower girl in a dress that made her look like she'd stepped directly out of a fairy tale. She took her duties very seriously, making sure every rose petal was distributed with mathematical precision. Isabella had sold her fortress-like penthouse and bought a house in Sophie's school district. 5 bedrooms, a big backyard with room for a swing set and a garden, space for the family she'd never thought she would have. She still ran Wynn Technologies, but with a completely new understanding of what success actually meant. Profit margins mattered less than family dinners around a table where everyone had something to share about their day. Board meetings took second priority to school plays and soccer games and bedtime stories that sometimes lasted for hours. Corporate acquisitions couldn't compete with Sunday morning pancakes and impromptu dance parties in the living room. Evan had returned to federal service, but strictly on his own terms. No extended deployments that would take him away from his family for weeks at a time. No operations that would prevent him from being home every single night for dinner and homework help and the 1,000 small moments that make a life worth living. Carmen had been surprisingly accommodating about his conditions, especially after Wynn Technologies donated $50 million to federal agent family support programs and established a scholarship fund for the children of agents killed in the line of duty. But the real transformation wasn't in their careers or their bank accounts or their living arrangements. It was in their hearts. Standing at the altar, watching Evan promise to love and protect her for the rest of their lives, Isabella remembered that young woman who'd wanted to be a doctor, who dreamed of saving people and making the world a better place. She'd found her way back to that dream, just not in the way she'd ever expected. Because sometimes saving people has nothing to do with medicine or money or power. Sometimes it's as simple as showing genuine kindness to a stranger who serves your dinner. Sometimes it's as brave as risking everything you've built for love that arrives at the most impossible time. Sometimes it's as profound as discovering that the most extraordinary heroes really do hide in plain sight, wearing aprons instead of armor, serving tables instead of serving justice, protecting what matters most in the quietest, most powerful ways possible. As Sophie threw rose petals with scientific precision and their small gathering of loved ones applauded, Isabella thought about that night 6 months earlier when 4 professional assassins had tried to eliminate a billionaire CEO and steal technology that could change the world. They had failed completely, not because of money or sophisticated security systems or corporate protection protocols. They had failed because a ghost named Marcus Sullivan had decided that some things were worth coming back to life for. Some people were worth dying to protect. And some love stories begin in the most impossible places at the most dangerous times. When 2 people discover that they've been searching for each other without even knowing it. Listen to me very carefully. because what I'm about to tell you will fundamentally change how you see the world around you and everyone in it. This story isn't fiction. The names have been changed and the details carefully altered to protect people who are still out there doing dangerous work, but stories exactly like this one are happening right now. All around you, every single day. That quiet person serving your morning coffee might be a former Navy SEAL carrying secrets that could topple governments. The cashier at your grocery store who always remembers your name and asks about your family might be a retired CIA operative who once saved a president's life. The teacher at your child's school who stays late to help struggling students might be someone who walked away from a world of shadows because they chose love and normal life over duty and danger. Heroes don't announce themselves with fanfare or dramatic music. They don't wear uniforms that identify them or carry badges that demand respect. They wear name tags and carry lunchboxes and worry about their children's homework and whether they can afford new school shoes this month and how to make grocery money stretch until the next paycheck arrives. And sometimes, just sometimes, when evil thinks it has won and darkness believes it has triumphed over everything good and decent in this world, these hidden guardians step out of the shadows and remind us all what true courage actually looks like when it's tested by real stakes. If the story gave you chills running down your spine, if it made your heart race and brought tears to your eyes, if it reminded you that ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary things when love is on the line, then you understand something that most people completely miss in their daily lives. You understand that we're surrounded by miracles disguised as everyday moments, by heroes hiding behind common faces, by love stories waiting to unfold in the most unexpected places. Every single day, I share stories exactly like this one with people who understand what you understand. Stories that most people never hear about the hidden heroes walking among us, about impossible love that blooms in the darkest places, about split-second decisions that change everything, about second chances and protection that comes from the most unexpected sources, about the breathtaking courage of people who choose to fight for strangers because it's simply the right thing to do. When you subscribe to this community, you're not just following another storyteller or clicking another button. You're joining a movement of people who believe that good still exists in this world, that love really can conquer anything, that heroes are everywhere around us if we just know how to see them properly. You're becoming part of a family that understands the most incredible stories aren't happening in movies or novels. They're happening right now at this very moment in coffee shops and restaurants and office buildings, wherever ordinary people decide that someone else's life is worth risking everything they have. Here's what I promise you. Once you start seeing the world through this lens, once you start noticing the quiet heroes in your own life, once you realize that magic and meaning are happening everywhere around us if we just pay attention, you will never be the same person again. You'll start looking at every waiter, every teacher, every person who serves others with completely new eyes, wondering what stories they carry, what battles they've fought, what lives they've saved, what sacrifices they've made that nobody will ever know about. You'll understand that the most dangerous people in the world might very well be the ones bringing you your dinner with a smile. And the safest place you could ever be is under the protection of someone who has everything to lose and still chooses to fight anyway. So hit that subscribe button like your heart and your future depend on it. Because in a world that seems to grow darker every day, these stories aren't just entertainment or distraction. They're hope made manifest. They're proof that good still fights back against evil. They're reminders that no matter how ordinary you think you are, no matter how small your life feels, there is a fire inside you that the world hasn't seen yet.